perfect.
Perfect.
Raw, messy stuff.
Yeah. What do you wish you would have known about leadership and pastoral ministry in your 20s and 30s?
Oh, gosh. Oh, there's just too many things to talk about. I kind of wish that I had been better prepared for people that really wouldn't take you seriously because I was in my 20s or 30s. And I also wish I had been a little bit more confident in my own and in my own intuitive ability to lead.
Oh, wow. That's good.
So.
One thing you wish you would have done differently early in your ministry. It's kind of similar, but...
Yeah, one thing, let's see, done differently. Well, my ministry journey has been kind of dictated a lot from the outside. Okay. And so it would have been, but I don't really wish I had done it differently, but it would have been nice to have had the opportunity to make some decisions solely on my own circumstances, as opposed to having to take lots of other people into account.
Okay.
But I don't regret that it ended up the way it did. So.
Yeah.
But
God redeems all those things.
Yeah, it redeems all. Exactly,
yeah.
It redeems all those
Lydia
things.
and I was like, Africa was like the worst, but if it got us to this point, we'd
right.
do Africa again.
Exactly,
so,
and
yeah.
That's true. That's true.
How about a spiritual discipline or habit or activity you found most helpful in your ministry?
I am out of the habit now, and that's why I realize it's really helpful because I need to get back into the habit, and that's journaling as a part of my prayer, and not journaling to get ideas about how to preach or what to do, but journaling simply for my own, that no one else is going to see.
Do you ever go back over your journals?
I do,
okay.
but I haven't in a long time, but I do, yeah.
Okay, from your perspective, and not like to cast judgment or anything, but when you look at the current like pastoral ministries and leaders around, what's like one thing you see derail more pastors than like a mistake they make or an attitude or a habit or a trait that you're like, man, as I look over things like at this time in the life of the church, this is something that pastors need to be careful about because it seems to be derailing more and more of them?
Wow, I'd have to give that one a bit more thought.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's go, because there's like a whole bunch of different things.
Okay.
No.
So often people talk about how God should be number one, spouse number two, children number three. But a lot of times in ministry, like we love ministry, we're good at ministry, like we love our jobs, and like the priorities get messed up. So how have you kept like marriage and family like in the right slot? You've already talked about God with like kind of journaling and other things, but like as far as marriage and family, how do you make sure that they don't kind of drop down the rungs?
That's a good one because I appreciate the God first, all that, because God absolutely has to be first. But sometimes we can skew that, and then our families don't just feel like they don't feel the God first part. They feel the I'm not being attended to. So I've kind of fudged a little, I suppose. God's still first, but really my family is right up there, and so I really think every time I am trying to discern what God is doing or what God is leading me to do, one of the first questions I ask is, how is this going to affect my overall family, especially when my kids were young? What is this decision going to do? How is it going to impact their discipleship? Because if I have a responsibility to raise, children who grow up into adults who will, pray that they'll follow Jesus also, Yeah. So they're much more intertwined. It's not nearly as delineated, okay. God first, yeah. as it sounds like when you make that statement. It's a whole lot more fuzzy, I think. But to me, that means that you're really being true to your whole, because God never asks you to do something that's going to undermine a promise that you've made to someone else, I don't believe.
Yeah. How about in the fact that, I know this is a different season, it wasn't always this way, but you're married and you're also a world leader, so you're traveling around a lot of places. So how is it like even choosing, like we've had this conversation before, like this wouldn't be a really great week for your husband to be here because you're busy with all this stuff.
Right.
So but I also know you're also great at saying, like we're going on this trip I'm not working right now. Like, I'm just, so like, can you talk a little
Right.
about them for people? Because sometimes we get so excited to do all this stuff, and it's like our spouses are waiting, like, well, when is my time? You know, so how does ministry not sometimes surpass marriage?
Oh, absolutely. Ministry can frequently surpass marriage. And well, in terms of the travel and the world leader thing,
Yeah.
My husband is getting to a point in his career where we can coordinate the travel so that maybe he can join me. So we try to be deliberate about, for instance, he's a physician, so when we are looking at planning his call schedule, he looks at where I'm going to go so that we can be deliberate. So it's about being deliberate. You've got to really just take the time to talk it through and be deliberate and not be haphazard about these decisions. I mean, there was at one point in time where people were encouraging me to put my name forward to be a bishop in the church, and I discussed that with my husband, and we knew in our own spirits that was not where God was leading us, I don't think I would have been a very good bishop, but that's beside the point. But not because we didn't think that might not be a possibility, but what made us realize, just for me personally, but what we realized in terms of the whole plan was that if that really was the direction God was going to go, he would have given John peace about that. And what that did for John was disrupt his spirit and really made him incredibly anxious. And there was never a settledness about it. And so we had to navigate that. So it wasn't just about God leading me to a particular thing of ministry. If God was going to lead me, God needed to bring John along with me, because, I don't think God would ever want my marriage to be sacrificed on the altar of ministry. I just don't think that's what God intends for us.
I wish I would have learned that myself, because Lindy was never at peace. She was like, we're about to have a baby. You think really going to Africa makes sense? And I'm like, yeah, it does. And I was like, wish I would have learned that earlier. So how do you effectively separate yourself from work to rest and develop like the rhythm of Sabbath? Like, that's one of the things people talk about a lot, like pastor burnout and things like that. Have you ever figured out a way to create that effective rhythm?
I'm really not very good at that.
Yeah,
unfortunately, I'm really not.
That is a common answer to that. So.
I'm not. I try to be. I mean, I try to be, but probably not as effectively as I should.
So we'll go a little bit easier. One book you'd recommend every pastor should read.
Oh,
Maybe
gosh.
that wasn't easy.
No, that wasn't.
Sometimes people say a few.
Yeah.
Maybe they come to mind.
Well, no, of course
I said the Bible. So.
Yeah, the Bible, exactly. Oh gosh, no, mine is going blank, truthfully, right now. I mean, the books that impacted me were a little bit more academic, so it's not. I don't know. I love C.S. Lewis. I love Henry Nouwen. I mean, I love those authors.
Great.
So,
any conference or like pastor you listen to sermons to, or podcasts or anything like that you'd say, like, having that is like, try to go to at least that once, in your life, that really can have an impact if you can plan on going to it. Or I try to listen to this more often than not, because when that pastor preaches, I'm always hearing some good stuff. Anything like that?
The New Room Conference has been meaningful for me over the last several years. That's and I really get a lot out of reading J.D. Walt's daily text. It's an email devotional that comes every day, and that's been. And oddly enough, I appreciate Richard Rohr. He's kind of at the opposite end of J.D., but there's some good balance between those two. Sometimes Richard Rohr can get a little out there, a little new agey for me, but he really does bring the theological Trinitarian perspective that I think is really, really meaningful.
Yeah. So sometimes in life we are approached with two really good opportunities. And how do you've kind of already hinted at this when we talked about marriage, but like how do you make those decisions when it's not like this one's really bad and this one's really good, well, we'll choose the good, but when they're both equally like, these would both be good ministries we should do as a church, or these are both great possibilities for my future. Any pointers on how you've made those decisions?
I've only been faced with that really one time in my life in terms of my own two opportunities. because in terms of my pastoral ministry, ultimately I was not in my local church pastoral ministry, because I've spent more of my time as a general evangelist than I have as a local church pastor. And during the local church pastor years, I didn't have the ultimate, I mean, I was really more of a follower in terms of that. I didn't have the ultimate leadership role to guide the conversation. But in my own personal life, I've had that one time, and it really boiled down to a sense of peace,
Okay.
and which one gave me the greater sense of peace about it. So
last one, a lot of times in the business world, they kind of ask companies, like, what is the smallest change we can make that'll have the greatest possible positive, like, net effect? So for a pastor, is there anything you'd say, like, you've learned in ministry, like, this is one small change that, like, years later, man, that was a huge impact, or one small thing you can do that has a big impact?
Well, I don't know if it's a small thing. I don't know about this one, but I found that if you simply encourage and empower other people, that can have, and it doesn't have to be like give them the biggest job on the planet. It just is a matter of freeing them up and encouraging them to do whatever small thing they've got that they've got going. That leavens the loaf of everything and I think makes a big difference. Now, sometimes that's really hard. That's not a small thing. Sometimes that's a big thing. But I think it makes a big difference when you empower and encourage other people to do stuff. It's not just all about you.